Hey kids, it's Mrs. D. I'm trying a new way of kind of recording things because I wanted to show you this lesson and have you be able to replay it as many times as you needed. So I'm trying this out, hope it works. Let me know how you feel about the format of everything. So we're going to talk an awful lot about how to integrate quotes properly, given that it's research paper year. And we like to kind of do that through a bunch of mini lessons that you guys practice all the time. You might have noticed that your SGO is about quote integration. And it's no surprise to me that you guys need practice at different skills. One skill that we want to talk about is embedding. So there are many ways to use evidence, and not all of them are direct quotation. Direct quotation you're the most familiar with. You have a narrate in, you have a comma, you have a chunky quote, you have the citation, then you have the narrate out. And at the top of this page up here, I have the full quote, the full section that I'm quoting. A lot of you would be tempted, if you were using this quote as evidence, to just put the quotation marks around it and be done. You know, that's how you're going to quote. A lot of you could improve the quality of your quotation by realizing that frequently you don't need everything in this select piece of text. So if this was what you pulled because you thought that this was a good way to show Montag was definitely carrying permanent or long-term damage from being a fireman, sure, you could show me that whole quote, but you don't need it. And think of your attention span and apply that to your reader. You guys don't want to read huge chunks of text in other people's writing. You know, if you're reading a criticism and you see a quote this long in it, your brain shuts off. You don't really want to engage with that much extra text. Neither do your readers. People only want it if it's all useful to them. And there are definitely times when it is. So when it is useful to you guys, you should totally use it. But a lot of times you don't need to. Embedding a quote is a skill where you take a few specific and important phrases from within the quote and you shrink them down to really bite-sized pieces and implant them in a sentence grammatically correctly. So if you look underneath, what I did was I went through this quote, pulled out some important pieces, and embedded them into a sentence. So the full quote reads, Montag grinned the fierce grin of all men singed and driven back by flame. He knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man, burnt corked in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fiery smile still gripped by his face muscles in the dark. It never went away. That smile, it never ever went away, as long as he remembered. Really what we want to get at there is the permanence, the idea that it never ever goes away. And then you can choose several different pieces from within the first part to demonstrate that his smile is like a mask, that he doesn't really enjoy this, that there's damage done. I chose the phrase minstrel man, mostly because I love me some history and it refers to somebody who's like a jokester, somebody who's like a court gesture, that would have like a mask on that's disguising what they really think and feel. You could do this a couple other ways too. If you wanted to use that same phrase at the end, never ever went away as long as he remembered, you could pair it with other things. But look at how I pull a couple of those phrases and then put them in the sentence. So the sentence reads, Montag was always a minstrel man whose mask-like smile never ever went away as long as he remembered. Now notice, I still include the citation, and a common mistake many of you make, the citation goes inside the period. We have to put it inside the period because the citation refers to whatever is being referenced in the sentence. So if you put it outside the period, then you didn't actually tell me where you pulled the text inside of your previous sentence. You don't have to write Bradbury on that text, but you could. It's not incorrect to write Bradbury there, but once you know it's Bradbury and it doesn't change, you can kind of leave off the author last name until there's a change. So in other words, if you are writing an entire essay and the only person you're citing is Ray Bradbury, you can use Bradbury the first time and then you don't have to anymore. If you're wondering if it's right or wrong, you should always err on the side of adding the last name of the author because it's always correct to do that. Another way that you could embed the quote, just so you see me live in action doing it, is I would go through and I would look at phrases that imply that he's like aware of his situation. So I liked Minstrel Man. I already used that one. You could do Wink at Myself. The fierce grin of all men singed and driven back by flame. You could do something to explain that. Importantly, I think the one that can't be taken away is on the end here. It never ever went away. So check out how I would integrate pieces of these. Montag's smile was clearly forced, a product of being singed and driven back by a flame. And he knows that it only produces false feelings for those observing him. 2, he is not fooled because he knows he can wink at himself. And more troubling, Montag knows this feeling never ever goes away. Now, I said that the phrasing had to be grammatically correct inside the sentence. So notice in this second part, I didn't use the phrase never ever went away, because to say never ever went away would be wrong inside of the sentence. For an embedded quote to be done correctly, when you read the final sentence, it has to read smoothly. The audience shouldn't hear that you're quoting part of it. But when they read it, they should see it because there's quotations around certain parts. That's what I mean by grammatically correct. If I were to read that sentence and I were to read, he is not fooled because he knows he can wink at himself, and more troubling, Montag knows this feeling never ever went away as long as he remembered. The verb tenses are off. The first half of the sentence is a different one than the second half, and it sounds strange. But I can continue to give you the right feeling and use text from the book by just chopping it down slightly. And when you use the page number, someone can always go back and see why you cut it down. So if they see that you cut it down because the grammar didn't match up, that's not the same as cutting it so far that it doesn't mean the same thing. I hope this has been a useful little mini lesson in embedded quotes for you guys. I certainly look forward to seeing more and more of these. This is the skill that we work the hardest to develop all year. If you guys really try this and practice it, you will start using embedded quote significantly more than you will use direct quotation. And it's usually not only easier to do, but in a lot of ways, much more efficient to do than direct quoting. Just because you could give someone that whole 4-line quote doesn't mean you need to. So have a good day. Hope you guys are still doing your reading, and more on quote identification and interpretation later.